What's up YouTube, Justin Fuller here, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the 2023 Honda CR-V EX. I've got a Diamond White Pearl Edition sitting behind me, and I'm going to talk about how it compares against what's out there in the market and how it's different from the previous generation. So let's hop on in. All right guys, so here we are at the front of this CR-V, and not much has changed under the hood, but the front grille and layout has definitely changed. As you see, it's gotten bigger, a little bit wider. It's a little bit fatter look. So let's pop this thing open and talk about some different things. One thing I will point out is you don't have to mount up and guard this anymore. It actually has actuators that'll hold it up for you. Now, when you come into here, you've got your brake distribution right here. You can easily get to your windshield wiper fluid. Obviously, if you need to drop in oil, your OW20 is gonna go right here. Your 4-cylinder engine, as we come across. I've got my battery terminals, which are easily accessible. In case you need to jump the car, you wanna add auxiliary lights, amps, anything like that. My fuse box is sitting right here. And then I've got air coming into the car right here. So not bad. You've got some space to work with back there. So still a 4-cylinder, still turboed. So you're still getting 190 horsepower to this 1.5 liter turboed engine. So nothing has changed from 2022 to 2023. All right guys, so before we leave the front end of this vehicle, I want to do a horsepower comparison so you can understand how this car stacks up to other makes and models that are out there in the market, right? It's competition. So 190 horsepower in this vehicle. I'm gonna throw something up on the screen so you can see how this car stacks up to some of the other makes and models out there. After we take a look at that, we're gonna jump over to miles per gallon. All right guys, so next up I wanna talk about this little area right here. I wanna talk about miles per gallon. What are you gonna spend on gas, right? So 28 in the city and 34 on the highway is what this specific vehicle is getting. So I'm gonna throw something up on the screen so you can see how this car stacks up to some of the other makes and models that are out there in the market. Now, while I'm throwing that up, I will remind you that this is the exact same gas mileage that you'll get in the previous model, right, the 2022. Now, if you're on an all-wheel drive model like this one actually is, you're actually gonna get 27 in the city and 32, so understand that you're gonna lose a mile off the city and a couple miles off the highway if you're looking at that all-wheel drive model. Chances are, if you're looking at a CR-V, you're thinking about cargo space. That's gonna play a role. So let's hop on in and talk about this, right? So as you can see right here, I wanna show you a couple different things. One, it comes with carpet floor mat. That's standard. Not every make and model offers that. And then you'll see right here, I've got this liner that they put in, so like a cargo tray. If you're interested in cargo trays, I've done some different reviews and stuff. If you're looking for this, you can obviously go with a Honda, the OEM part, or there's some Amazon parts that I recommend that are a little bit cheaper. I'll throw it down in the description if that's something you're looking at. Now, on here, I'll point out that you can lay this 100% flat, as you can see right now, or I can take this one step further and I can actually drop it down in, right? So previous generations could do this as well, but nice to know. Now, while we're back here, before I flip the seats down, you have 39.3 cubic feet of cargo space back here. Now, that's almost 2 feet extra compared to the previous generation, which I want to say was 37.6. So understand, if you're looking at a 2022 to 2023, you are going to get more cargo space overall. Now, flipping the seats down, you can, of course, push your tabs and push them down. So let's see if I can reach this and do this. I've got a couple different clicks here. It's actually locking in place, so that's a little bit different from previous generations. And then same thing on this side. Let me see if I can get it all the way down here. So let me move that all the way. I finally got it down. Okay. So now that we've got the back flip down, you can obviously see that there is a larger hump that exists here. So even if I pull this and flatten this out, right, it's definitely not as flat as the previous generation. So understand, if you're looking at this thinking about a camping or anything like that, you have this good hump right here now. So it is something to keep in mind depending on if you need that flat cargo space or not. Now, in the previous generation, you would have had 75.8 cubic feet in the very back. You now have 76.5 cubic feet. So comparing 2022 to 23, the 23 is bigger in both dimensions as far as cargo space. So 7 to 39, and then 75 to 76. Now, before we head into that second row, I want to do a couple things. I want to throw some comparisons up so you understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles out in the market. So with the seats flipped up, that 39 and change, I want you to see how this car stacks up to other makes and models out there in the market. Now, after we've looked at that on the screen, then I want to talk about flipping those down and go to that larger cargo space. I'm going to throw a different comparison up so you can see how this vehicle compares to some of those other vehicles out there in the market. After you take a look at both of those, let's hop into that second row and talk about it.
All right guys, so before we go any further, I want to talk to you about the trim level differences, but specifically I want you to understand that the 2022 and the 2023 are very different. Different starting points, different options, a lot is going on. So let's hop on into that. All right guys, so what you're seeing up here on the screen is the 2022 trim level breakdowns. So you can see that there's an LX, a special edition, then the EX. So this is where things are going to get a lot different. If you're looking at a 22 thinking, do I want a 2022 or do I want a 2023? Like, how do I want to handle this? Because on the 2023s, the EX is going to be your starting position. The LX and the LX and the special edition are now gone. So understand that there's a higher starting point. Now, you are getting the amenities that land in that EX, but I want you to understand that there are the trim levels below in the 2022 version versus the 2023 version. So let's jump over to the 2023 version. So here we are on the 2023 versions, and I want you to see these trims, right? So you can see that your starting position up here is actually going to be the EX, right? So we're in the 2022, you had those two models. Now you don't have those, but you also have these hybrid options, right? So now it's EX up to Sport Hybrid up to EXL up to Sport Touring, as you can see above me. So understand that if you're looking at a 23 and you're thinking, I want to jump up maybe, like what am I going to gain? I'll throw you the list of all the items that you're going to gain by jumping up to that Sport Hybrid, but I want you to understand it's different on the 2023 versus the 2022. So you're not going to have anything to fall down beneath to, like an LX or a special edition on your 2023 model. If you want to drop down, I would suggest maybe you look at the 2022, and then it gives you some options and some ways to spend less money but get yourself into a CRV. So now that we've taken a look at that, let's hop back into the car.
All right, guys, so here we are in the second row of this vehicle. And I'll point out, first off, I feel like I'm sitting a little bit higher up, so I can actually see I have a little bit more visibility out the front, which is different than the 2022. Now, when it comes to leg space, I'll point out that I pushed this almost all the way back, and I've still got some space, and I got it leaning back too, right? So understand if you're a bigger guy sitting behind a bigger guy in this car, you're gonna be okay, whether you're in a 22 or a 23. Now, I'll actually point out that this one has 40.1 inches of leg space in the second row, whereas the previous generation had 40.4, so 0.3 inches. I'm gonna call that negligible. But while we're here and talking about leg space, I wanna throw something up on the screen so you can see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market as far as second row leg space. Now, once you've taken a look at that, let's talk about the materials in the back, because it is a little bit different than the previous generation. Now, as you pull in here, you've got a little bit different materials here, so kind of a two-tone finish here with the gray on the black, right, or kind of a black printed. And then as I come across, you can see they've done this like black textured plastic. It used to be like a faux wood finish, so they've changed that out, right? So not necessarily bad looking, but just kind of odd. It's a little bit interesting. This is a full black version, right? And then we run down here, we've got speakers in the back. I've got one holder here, and guess what? 2023, still didn't do it. Still didn't give you that second thing. I'll never understand, right? So you do have two air vents in the back, and then I can see a slot cutout right here where it looks like when you're jumping up models, you can get those two additional USBs. For now, you'll have USBs up in the front of this vehicle, but in the EX, you're not gonna have them in the back. All right, guys, so we've jumped from the second row up to the front row, and I wanna talk to you about a couple things. Of course, the materials, how the layout feels, the seats are definitely different, and of course, leg space. So here I am up here, and I've got 41.3 inches of leg space, so it's massive, right? I could have scooted this seat way up, and you saw behind me, I was still sitting behind myself with comfort. So understand that you still have plenty of space as far as the vehicle goes. Now, as far as the seats go, I wanna point out that they are set up more like the Civic SI, in that sense that they have these side deals that like kind of grab your body and hold you tight. I'm 250 and I'm about 6 foot, and I fit in this fine. You know, if you start getting into the bigger frame size, maybe you'll run into some issues, but I really doubt it. I've still got space. As you come across, they're keeping the black here. We've got the leather finish. I've got that same kind of weird black plastic. I don't know how I feel about that. They have changed this out to mimic the Civic, which I do like. It's just like one big grille, so it's uniform and a little bit more slick, but they've done that same kind of black plastic. I would have loved to seen that be something else. Chrome, smoked chrome something, but yeah, nonetheless, either way. Now, in the center console, they've changed a lot out, right? So I've still got a console that I can use. It's nice and big. I've got some rubber storage, 2 cup holders, some buttons as far as jumping between auto start stop, you know, some hill start assist, my power brake, and then brake hold, and then some drive modes that I'll go over. And then of course I have this nice large area where I can store stuff if I don't throw my things and break it. It's rubber finish too, so I do like that this is nice and big. So if you are gonna plug your phone in, you can set it right here so you don't have wires dangling and running all about, right? So it makes a lot of sense there. And then of course I got a power outlet, a USB, and then a USB-C. All right guys, so let me walk you across the dash right here and just explain some buttons and knobs as we go across. So down below I've got my hood release, right? You don't have a gas can release anywhere in here because it's connected to the door locks. You just press on it. Now you're gonna see vehicle stability assist right here. So this works with your traction control. So in the event you go into skid, it'll transfer power to whichever wheel's getting better traction. And you can see I have empty slots depending on if I'm that EXL or that Touring model where I might have some additional buttons for things like sensors, parking sensors, and so forth. forth and so on. As you come up, you of course can see the AC vents that continues and runs all the way across the dash we talked about earlier. Now, you have a full digital screen here, which I like. Or actually, I should say the left side is digital, the right side is still your analog, but it's just a clean, nice look. Now, when you're up here, I'll point out that I'm gonna scroll with right here, and then you can select and do some different things here, but you still can understand what we're gonna jump into, right? So I've got all these different menus that can get through. So speed and range, these are all gonna be related to your miles per gallon. My warning systems, if I leave a door open, if I've got, a seatbelt not connected, things of that nature, so you can understand that. My gauge display, if I wanna start cleaning things up, moving stuff around, I can absolutely do that from here. Settings, if I wanna jump in and start changing things, right? Vehicle settings, this is where door locks, window locks, those sort of controls are gonna be found. So it just makes it nice when I can jump into these. TPMS calibration, as we head into these months where it gets hot in the day and then cold at night, that might play a role for you. Your driver assisted setup, right? That's gonna be any of the Honda sensing features. Meter setups, if you want to turn on and off like your tachometer or any of that stuff, it's going to be right there. Keyless access, so when I walk up and touch the door handle, do I want it to open just my driver's door, or do I want it to open all the doors? There's a lot of different things, and a lot of these are going to be very similar to the 2022 version, and I've actually made it tips and tricks if you want to understand some things on how to customize this car. So I'll throw that link up on the screen so you can see the 2022 until I get this 2023 tips and tricks made for you, so just understand that. Right, so a lot of different things in here that you can play with, so just understanding that. We're going to keep going up here. Brightness, easy to understand, no content if I just want to blank this out, right? I just want to keep things nice and clean. Safety support, that's gonna be those Honda sensing features. So as I push up and down, it's gonna show me what's on, right? So as I scroll the first one down, this is gonna be road departure mitigation. Now what that is if I start to drift off the shoulder of the road, right, where you normally hit the braille bumps, that kind of thing, it'll actually give me an audible alert and shake the wheel to be like, hey, wake up, pay attention, and that way I can come back over, right? The next one down, I'm gonna jump over to blind spot information system. So you're probably familiar with how blind spot information system works, but if you're not, what it is right here in the mirror, I have an icon of my car. And whenever there's somebody sitting in my blind spot back there, it'll actually light up and let me know, hey, there's a car there. Now, if I start to get over, it's actually gonna give me an audible alert and flash in the mirror in that icon to help protect you from getting in that accident. Now, one more down, this is collision mitigation braking. Now, this works with your traction control. So if I'm going forward, or excuse me, not traction control, but some of the sensors on the front of the car. Now, if I'm going, and let's say it's looking like I'm gonna rear in another car, first it'll give me an audible alert, it'll flash in the dash, and if I don't hit the brakes, it's gonna apply the brakes for me to help prevent an accident. Now, this same technology is going to be used in my cruise control settings as well. And I'll explain that when we get there, but I just want you to understand these two basic features that you're seeing in front of you, right? So easy to understand your safety support. Maintenance, right? You'll get you'll get alerts when your car is due for an oil change or anything like that. I want to say oil change about every 7,500 miles. Seatbelts, this is where it'll tell me who's not wearing a seatbelt, so you can see that I currently am not wearing a seatbelt while sitting in this car. It's cool if you got little ones in the back to where you can make sure everybody's set up correctly. Now, all-wheel drive, since this vehicle is all-wheel drive, you can get that torque distribution. It'll distribute and tell you when it's in which mode, since all-wheel drive is designed to do that. So that's kind of the full range of this other side. You can see, like I said, if you want tips and tricks and want to know about customization, there'll be a link up top, and then of course down in the description, I'll share it there as well. Now, when you come over to the other side, this is where you're going to see some of those additional Honda sensing features. So right, like if I want to get up to speed, and first thing, let's talk about lane keep assist, right? So lane keep assist, if I press this button right here, you're going to see this icon come up right there. And what that's set up to do is it uses a camera that's looking right up here to detect the lines on the road. So if I start to drift to the left or right, it can actually keep me centered in my lane. So it'll just kind of pull it to the left or right to keep me in there so I don't drift into the car next to me. So a really cool feature, but understand if you turn your windshield wipers on, it's gonna disengage that feature. They want you to focus on the road at that point. Now, the next one is gonna be related to cruise control, right? So there's a couple different things I can do. I could get up to my speed and set my speed, right? And you're gonna see this icon come on that's right here. Now, once I've done that, I can set the distance it'll keep between me and the car in front of me. Now, when I press this button right here, you're gonna see these boxes appear. The more boxes, the more space it's gonna keep between me and the car in front of me. This is adaptive cruise control, right? So what it's doing is it's using that radar down in the grill to bounce off the car in front of me. Now, it's detecting that space, so if I set it to 65 and the guy slows down to 55, it'll keep my designated space until I get out from behind him, and then it'll take me back up to my speed. So this way I'm not turning my cruise control on and off, that sort of thing. Now, if you want classic cruise control, you can press and hold, and it'll flip over and say cruise mode selected, or I can press it again, and then it'll flip over and say ACC, which is adaptive cruise control selected. So none of this has changed from 2022 to 2023. I just want you to understand that. Of course, I have auto on-off headlights, and then I've got my windshield wiper controls right here. So that's the basics of this. Now let's talk about the touchscreen. Let's talk about, of course, Android Auto and Apple Carplay. It's connecting to your phone, and then everything that it offers. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about on the touchscreen is just if I'm setting up normally without connecting up my phone, and using Android Auto or Apple Carplay, right? So a very basic setup, right? It is a touchscreen, so I can obviously hop over, use my radio, my FM, my AM, those sort of things. Media-wise, I can jump in here, USB if I want to plug something in, whether it be a phone, whether it be a device, or whether it be maybe storage, right? And then connecting up via Bluetooth, you can see my phone is currently connected up, and then I jump back, right? And then jumping over to the phone, I can access my favorites, my contacts, all the normal things you should be able to do in a brand new vehicle. Now, I want to connect this car up via Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I happen to use a Google Pixel 7, as you saw, so I'm going to plug the phone in so that we can get this kind of up and running. Now, I'm going to hit connect and see if I need to jump over here, and then it's going to jump to Android Auto, right? So you can see Google Maps is pulled up on the screen. I can press my menu and then have access to all these different apps. The apps are forever changing. I highly encourage you, if you're curious to, hey, will it work, will it not work? You can always check that. As far as, what's currently active and what are the top apps that people like to use. I'm a big fan of using this for navigation. I like Google Maps, I like Waze. If you're an Apple Maps person, maybe you want to use that. I don't know why, but you could, since most people prefer one of the two I mentioned before. Jumping back to the Honda screen is as simple as there. I've got a calendar, I've got YouTube Music, I've got all kinds of things, even Teams, right? I work remote for my full-time job, so I can, access that and see what's going on. Spotify, you can see one of the last songs that I had pulled up, right? So very easy to understand. Now, understand if you want to customize this backdrop, if you want to do some different things, right? I do have a settings button that I can jump into and start changing how things work, changing my wallpaper, all these different things. It's not hard to do, right? As simple as doing that and then jumping back. So understand this is very easy to customize. Now, if you want to move all your apps around, you can actually press on the screen and hold, and then it'll say, hey, app launcher, it'll pull this up, and then you can shift around all your apps. You'll have to unplug it and plug it back in, and then it'll rearrange your apps. Once again, I have done a tips and tricks video on this, so if you're looking to understand a little bit more of customization as far as setting up, like, hey, can I set up like custom people to call or directions already to something where I can press a button and it'll automatically set up my directions and take me somewhere, you can absolutely do that. Check out my tips and tricks video. It'll show you exactly how to do all that. Right, so I think at this point, most people understand Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Pretty awesome. You should have it in your car. If you don't, you're kind of missing out. So the touchscreen, other than that, I'll tell you, they have from 2022 into 2023, this exact same touchscreen. Nothing has changed. Prior to that, in previous generations, you could do a lot more customization on the screen and do some different things, but I don't know that that's a necessary game killer at this point. There's a lot that I can do, and I can do what I want as far as enjoying my ride and listening to my music and having my navigation, so easy enough to understand. So I want to talk about the back of camera before we go too far. First off, I want to point out that you have three different views back here, right? A wide angle, a normal, and then when aimed straight down if you're like parallel parking or backing up to a garage, a bush, a big curb, cement, whatever it may be. Now, while you're back here, I'll point out this dotted line is where your hatch is going to open up to, right? So if you're backing up to something, understand that if you need to be able to open the hatch, you want it to be landing on the other side so that you can open it to here. Now, the solid line is going to be for like parallel parking. You want that other car to be sitting somewhere on the other side of this line, or it's going to start to get really tight. And you can see this on all three of these different views. Now, while we're back here, you can see I'm in between two further large cars. Now, if I couldn't see, which I'm getting actually, I don't know, what is that, 270 degrees, you can see a car coming here. But, perfect example, you have got these sensors on the back of the car, cross-traffic monitoring, that will let you know if somebody's coming from the left or right. You get the audible alert, and on the screen, it'll show you so that you don't back up and get sideswiped by a car. So understand that you've got some cool things. Once again, this hasn't changed from 2022 to 2023, the exact same, but very cool features that you don't always find in other makes and models. All right, guys, so that's kind of a quick rundown of this vehicle. So hopefully you understood some of the differences between the 2022 and 2023. Not a whole lot as far as interior and electronics. It's really about spacing and size of the vehicle. So I just want you to understand that. I want to go back and revisit everything that we went under so you understand kind of what we talked about. First off, I want to talk about horsepower. This car gets 190 horsepower out of a 1.5 liter turbo engine, same as the 2022, but I want you to understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the world, right? Now, after you've taken a look at that comparison that I just threw up on the screen, I want to talk to you about miles per gallon. This car gets 28 in the city and 34 on the highway in my two-wheel drive models. If you're on that all-wheel drive model, you're at that 27 and 32. So I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. Now, after that, let's talk about front row leg space. This car had 41.3 inches of leg space up in the front row. So not much different from the previous generation. I want to say it's exactly the same, right? But I want you to understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles on the market. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen so you can see and understand how that works. Now, when you jump into the second row of this vehicle, you have got 40.1 cubic inches of leg space in the second row, right? So I want to show you, of course, comparison how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market so you can understand, right? Now, from previous generation, that's like 0.1 inches different in the back. So not much difference as far as the leg space, but I will tell you, you sit a little bit higher. So you can kind of see over and out. That might be good for you depending on if you get road sick or anything like that. So kind of cool. But what I don't like is when you flip those seats down, you get that big hump, which I think is what's causing it to sit higher. So it's kind of a give and take when it comes to that. All right, so I want to talk to you about cargo space in this vehicle, right? So we talked about two different dimensions when it comes to this vehicle. We talked about with this back seats flipped up, right, as far as what you've got, and you've got 39.3 cubic feet of space. Now, from the previous generation, you would have had 37.6, so you're giving up a little bit. So I want you to understand 2022 to 2023, what that difference is, but I also want you to understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market. So I'm gonna throw something up on the screen so you can see how does this car stack up as far as cargo space with the seats flipped up. Now, after that, I'm gonna talk about flipping those seats down. Now, we talked about the hump that's back there, so it does affect a little bit as far as what you can lay flat and whatnot, camping and things of that nature. Not the end of the world, but let's talk about cargo space. You've got 76.5 feet with it flipped down of cubic space. Now, your previous generation was 75.8, so not a ton of difference if you're looking at a 2022 to 2023. But I want you to understand how this car stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market, so take a look at that comparison as well. So we've now made it through all those different things that we talked about as far as the comparisons, how it stacks up to other vehicles out there in the market, and then how it's different from the 2022 to 2023. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please do reach out to me. I hope you do a couple favors for me. One, press that like button. It's always nice to feel that people are watching this, enjoying the content. Two, I hope that you'll subscribe to the channel so when I make other videos, tips and tricks, different things on cars, you will get them. And then, of course, leave a comment, man. What do you think? Did I do all right? Do you have questions? Is there something you wish I would have gone over? Drop me a comment, man. Let me know what you think. Outside of that, like, comment, subscribe, and